All right, guys, so I just wanted to record a quick video in terms of showing you how to set up your final scene for turning it in on Friday. And part of that is going to be play blasting your video. So we're going to take a look at setting up your scene, play blasting it, and then getting everything organized for submission. So the first thing I want to do is once you get your entire ball bounce completed, so you've got your lead ball, your balloon, and bouncy ball finished in terms of animation, you're ready to play blast your final video. What you'll want to do is set up your camera angle, and I know we've talked about this before, but just make sure it's an interesting camera angle, so don't position your camera directly above or parallel to everything that's happening here, because it may not be the most interesting way to display your work. From the side here, we will get your arcs, which is great, but we really won't get a lot of separation between your bounces and the ground plane, so we're not kind of establishing that ground plane, and we're not seeing a lot of the sort of nuance to your animation. And then from the top down like this, we're definitely losing a lot of the performance in this. We're not getting the arcs at all, so probably not the best way to view this. So I would recommend maybe doing something about a 3/4 view here. We want everything to fill your composition, so we want to get in here as close as we can, and then I'm going to scrub through the timeline to make sure I'm getting all of the performance here, so we're not cutting anything off. So if I zoom in like this, my lead ball's off screen. If we're too far over like this, the bouncy ball rolls off frame there on the right. So we want to make sure we're zoomed in as much as we can, but we also want to see all of the balls for the entire duration. So I'm going to come here to the first frame and zoom out here just enough so I can see my balls up here in the top left-hand corner. And then I'm going to scrub through my timeline, and that looks pretty good. So I can see my balls for the entirety of the animation. That's something else you'll want to check is down here, make sure you're giving yourself enough frames. So it looks like this animation does go for a total of 240 frames, so that's good. So our playback range is set up. I've got my camera angle now, something a little more interesting, so that I can see the performance of all the ball bounces. Something else you might want to do to distinguish your ball bounces from the background and the ground plane from the background. If you hold the Alt key on your keyboard and press B like Bravo, you can actually cycle through your background colors there, and you might get something that adds a little more contrast between your bouncy balls and the ground plane itself. So maybe a lighter background will help that dark ground plane stand out, and then again the balls will stand out maybe a little bit more from that lighter color. So you might do something like that. So again, just kind of play with these until you get something that has some contrast. Let's see, what else do we want to do? Let's go into the render settings real quick. So I'm going to click on the render settings icon up here. And under render settings, you'll want to scroll down until you get to image size. And here where it says presets, usually by default this is set to, I believe, 540. You'll want to switch this from HD 540 to HD 1080. And that's all you need to do there, and then hit close. And then we want to play blast this. So I'm going to right click on my timeline. Here where it says Play Blast, I'm going to click on the options box. And there's a couple things we want to do. So one thing I want to do is where it says Show Ornaments, turn that off. So it doesn't show any sort of ornaments. That's your translation. If you had controls and things like that, it would turn those off. If you had the view cube on, it's going to turn that kind of stuff off. So just turn that off. For format, go ahead and select QuickTime or QT from this drop list. Now where it says encoding, I believe previously we had used H.264, but I'm noticing a lot of crashing issues with rendering the Playblast with H.264. So instead of using H.264 from this list, set it to PNG. Seems to work pretty well. For quality, set it at 100%. Now where it says display size, click on this drop list and switch it from window to from render settings. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the render settings that we just specified earlier, so that in HD 1080, it's going to take those specifications and apply it to this play blast. For scale, go ahead and leave it at 1. So I think by default, I want to say it's at 0.7 or something like that. Just key in a value of 1 there. Frame padding of 4 is fine. You want to actually save the file. So here it says Save to File. Make sure that box is selected. If it's not selected, this area is grayed out. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then let's browse and tell it where to save the video. So let's hit browse. Now I'm using Kimberly's ball bounce. She was kind enough to let me borrow her scene file. So we want to make sure it's going into the appropriate project folder. So I'm going to hop here into the M drive. Here we have her scene folder. I'm going to open that up, and you want to save your final Playblast directly into the movies folder. So I'm going to open up that movies folder, and let's go ahead and save it in here. Now I've already got a ball bounce saved, so I'm going to go ahead and overwrite this. And then you want to stick with your the naming convention. So we're going to title this last name underscore first name underscore title of the project. And then let's go ahead and hit save. And we should be ready to go. So I'm going to hit Playblast. It's going to ask me to overwrite since I already have one. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. It's going to overwrite the old Playblast. Just going to preview this as it's playblasting here in our work view. And then once it's reached the end of our frame range, so the full 240 frames, it'll stop, and then it might attempt to automatically play it. We'll see. Yep. So usually it tries to automatically open up your file in Windows Media Player, and it's going to present you with an error. So if it does try to open up in Windows Media Player, just ignore the error and close Windows Media Player out entirely. And then if you want to preview your ball bounce, go to your project folder. So hopefully we're working off the M drive. We're going to go to the movies folder, and right there we have the video. Right click on this, go to open with, and open it with QuickTime Player. QuickTime, it is the QuickTime Pro. It's a really old media player, but it's probably the best for playback in terms of previewing animation. So if I bring up QuickTime, we can pull this up. And if you want to loop your animation, before you play it back, hold Control on your keyboard and press L like Lima. It'll look like nothing's happened, but if I hit spacebar, it'll play through the animation, and because I hit Control L, it should just loop continuously through the animation. So once it's done, yep, it'll just keep playing back until I hit spacebar again to stop playback. Now again, one of the great things about QuickTime is I can use the directional arrows left and right to frame by frame. So if I hit the left arrow, it's going to go back frame by frame, or if I hit the forward arrow. So this is just going to make Critique on Friday a lot easier, because I'll be able to open this up in QuickTime and frame by frame your animation so we can see what's going on here. For Friday, what'll be due is your entire project folder. So you should have your whole project folder, and inside there we'll have your scenes folder with your most current version of your Maya scene file with the ball bounce. And then in your movies folder, I should have your final Playblast of your ball bounce. So you'll just turn in this entire project folder for Friday. So I'll stop here.